Applicants aiming to dismiss on the grounds that her 14th Amendment right to due process has been abridged and that the state, by its own admission, failed to take affirmative action to preserve evidence which may have been exculpatory in nature, specifically the video from 2 cameras outside the Manchester Police Department. She has a right to all proofs in her defense, and due to negligence or possibly even bad faith, that right has been abridged.
Have you filed a written motion consistent with the rules concerning this?
I have spoke to Mr. Mueller about them, and he did inform us that the video evidence is overwritten after a certain period of time, and that they did fail to preserve it.
Perhaps you didn't hear my question. The question was, did you file a written motion concerning this?
Beyond the original request for discovery, no.
Then, at this time, the motion is inappropriate. We will deal with the trial.
Will it be considered after trial?
Sir, Part 2, Article 79 of the New Hampshire Constitution forbids a judge as acting as counsel providing legal advice. I can't counsel you as to what to do.
No, I wouldn't ask for advice, just procedure.
Sir, that's advice, legal advice.
All right.
The parties are ready to proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. As a preliminary matter, there are a couple of outstanding motions. The government filed a notice of intent to file a new complaint. That was a violation of the warrant statute. The government asked that the...
Well, it's not a motion, it's a notice.
Yes, sir.
So the parties, I guess, are ready to proceed.
Yes, sir. We just get the matter document and just get copies to everyone at this point. So copies will be provided with the motion.
All right.
Or notice, sorry. Apologies, Your Honor. And the other matter was a motion just to amend the criminal mischief complaint. It reads the amount less than $100. I was just going to strike that language as is proceeding with Class B misdemeanor in this matter where pecuniary loss is not an element of the offense.
Was there an objection to the motion?
I made an objection in writing to the motion. I believe it has been ruled on.
Sure, again, if you're going to be representing her, I have no problem with that, but for, again, you need to stand when you're addressing the court, so we lose the right to do it. And I'm going to let the matter stand as is.
Thank you, sir. State. Mr. Chair, proceed at this point, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you. State calls Detective 2 minutes to correct. Craig, will you please remain standing and raise your right hand? You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and the pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
Please be seated, sir. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Timothy M. Craig, C-R-A-I-G.
Mr. Craig, how are you employed?
I am employed as a detective with the Manchester, New Hampshire Police Department.
How long have you been so employed?
I've been with the Manchester Police Department for 14 years now.
Which division are you assigned, sir?
I am assigned to the Juvenile Division.
And what are the nature of your duties with the Manchester Police Department?
On top of investigating juvenile crimes, I also am a computer forensic examiner / cell phone analyst for the Manchester Police Department, as well as the New Hampshire Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, as well as the New England Electronics Crimes Task Force by U.S. Secret Service, now a task force officer for the Department of Homeland Security. They are now called HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, formerly ICE, computer examiner for them.
Sir, are you familiar with an incident that was alleged to have occurred on June 4th, 2011?
Yes, I am.
Okay. That's at the Manchester Police Department home, somebody on the wall?
Yes.
As part of that matter, did you conduct any searches of any property that was taken?
Yes, I did. I obtained a valid search warrant from Judge Champagne of the Manchester District Court, which is now the Ninth Circuit District Court, on June 16th to examine a number of cell phones and also camera devices for any recordings of the incident that happened on that day.
In particular, did you review a Cisco Flip video camera labeled as EMJ1?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the court how you conducted an examination of that item?
Like any other evidence that I take into property, I take photos of it, I take it out of its bag, out of its evidence bag, I process it forensically with the tools that I used at my disposal, using right blockers and that stuff, so we do not make any changes to the media whatsoever. I actually then acquire the image, and once I image that device, I actually used some of my forensics tools to acquire the videos off of that device through my exact copy of it. I never used the original piece of the media.
And were you able to obtain any videos off that device?
Yes, I did. I was able to obtain 3 videos in question, and they were placed on a CD. I believe labeled as TMC5.
That CD was placed in evidence?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions for you at this time. Defense Representative Mayer, questions for you.
Thank you. You stated that you obtained a warrant. Did you file for that warrant?
No, sir, I do not. Sergeant John Patty did.
And were you able to read it before you proceeded?
Yes.
Okay. Did you notice that it said that you were to find information from the date and time of the incident and that pertained to the incident?
I was told to get basically all the information that was on those devices part of that whole incident, yes.
That is not what the warrant specifies. It specifies that you get information from the date and time of the event and that pertains to the event.
I'm going to object unless that's one question.
I see. I withdraw. I apologize. That was not a question. So you did not actually determine which videos that you downloaded were from the date and time of the incident or pertaining to the incident, and which ones were not. You simply downloaded everything.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, just a word with Mr. Rodriguez, just for a second. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, maybe excuse me the next witness.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. State calls Sergeant Joseph Mucci. Sergeant Mucci, because you may say raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. From the case, penalties of perjury.
I did.
Please be seated. Please state your name, display the last name for the record.
Joseph Mucci, MUCCI.
Mr. Mucci, how were you employed?
As a police officer with the city of Manchester.
How long have you been so employed?
15 years complete in July.
Which division are you assigned?
Currently patrol,
Is there what shift you work?
412.
Okay. Were you working that same shift back on June 4th, 2011?
Yes, I was.
On that day, do you recall how you were dressed?
I was dressed in a full police summer uniform,
Do you recall what kind of vehicle you were operating?
fully marked police supervisor's cruiser.
Do you remember in contact with an Amy O'Brien on that day?
I do.
Did you have personal contact with her?
I did.
Do you recognize her hearing report from today?
I did.
You point around and describe what she's wearing.
She's seated at the defense table wearing the black dress.
Or ask the record reflect the witnesses identify the defendant.
I take it you're not quarreling with who she's pointing out?
Pardon me?
You're not quarreling with who he's pointing out?
I do not.
All right, sure.
Sergeant Bush, can you describe the report, the observations that you made about Ms. O'Brien on that afternoon?
I parked my marked cruiser at the entrance to the federal lot on Chestnut Street, right at Chestnut, and observed the building from that location.
Which one was that, sir?
the police station. I can see Chestnut Street, northerly, as well as Merrimack Street.
Specifically, what did you observe Ms. O'Brien to be doing?
I observed Miss O'Brien squatting next to Mr. O'Connor. She was writing on the wall in colored chalk.
Did you take any immediate action regarding this observation?
Not immediately, no, I did not.
Subsequently, did you take some action regarding this observation?
Yes, I detained her at one point.
Can you describe what happened, your interaction with her when you detained her?
I had asked her for ID. She had asked me why. I explained to her that I was investigating criminal mischief, and I needed her ID to positively ID her.
What happened next, sir?
She told me she didn't have an ID with her. I advised her if she didn't have an ID, she could be arrested. However, she told me that she had it in the vehicle and asked me if I could follow her to a vehicle.
Did you follow her to the vehicle?
I did. She was being cooperative, so I gave her the benefit of the doubt and followed her to her vehicle.
Was she able to produce ID for you?
She did.
And Sergeant Mochi, are you aware if anyone gave Ms. O'Brien permission to write on the Manchester Police Department?
No, I am not aware of anyone giving her that right.
And just for clarification, where was she writing on the police department?
She was writing on the retaining wall along Chestnut Street.
Of course, Commissioner, your first witness.
Amen.
Sorry, let me show you the video. Just ask you a quick question, Sergeant. This is fair and accurate representation of the scene where you were, some Manchester Police Department.
Yes, that's along Chestnut Street in front of the building.
Is that you pictured in this video?
That is.
Sergeant Bucci, do you recognize the defendant anywhere in this video? Okay. Can you tell if she's holding anything in the video?
She's holding a piece of blue chalk.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of your interaction on that afternoon, Sergeant Bucci?
My interaction with.
The group.
Yes. All right.
Show you the second video, Sergeant Bucci. Sergeant Bucci, you recognize the scene where this is?
I do.
Where is it?
That's the north entrance to the front floor of the police department. It's up above the actual retaining wall.
Which street are you on, sir?
Chestnut.
Or I'm just saying to see where it is, that's all. I'm actually saying the more relevant part now. All right. Sergeant Bucci, do you recognize the scene?
Yes.
What's happening here, sir?
I'm walking with Miss O'Brien
Where are you going, sir?
to her vehicle.
Okay, it's a fair, accurate representation of your interaction with her that afternoon? Severe abuse. Right here, sir. Thank you, Sergeant Bucci. No further questions at this time. If anybody has questions for you.
Sir?
Sergeant Bush, in your incident report, you state that you were on scene and that you were returning to the police station and viewed people jogging the building, and that you exited your vehicle. As the video shows, you were up speaking with them.
At one point, I was up speaking. When you refer to up, are you referring up on top of the
Yes, in chronological order. That, pardon me just a second. I apologize. At approximately 16:45 hours, returning to MPT after an arrest, you observed a number of subjects in front of the police station. These subjects were riding on the building. I notified dispatch of what I observed, went around the block, and exited the cruiser. I identified Adam Miller, David Newman, they identified as Wesley Gilray, shocking. That's all correct?
Yes, at that time.
And you engaged them in conversation. Shortly after, Sergeant Butcher came outside and asked that you observe. It says, at this time you parked your cruiser, so I'm certain between the time that you spoke with Sergeant Butcher and the time that you parked your cruiser, you left the premises.
No, I never left.
Okay. How did you come from speaking to Wesley Gilray and Sergeant Butcher to being in your cruiser? Can you describe the events between that space of time?
I walked off the sidewalk of my cruiser, took a left on Merrimack Street, turned around in the fire department, parked on Merrimack Street.
Now, when you were speaking to Wesley and Adam, they were chalking. There was a conversation going on. You said he stopped chalking and then continued chalking.
You're going to object this one. What is relevant to what they're doing?
The relevance is timeline between when he left the area and got into his cruiser and circled around the block.
How does that go to the elements of either of the charged offenses?
Well, what I would like to show is that as Sergeant Mucci was up interacting with these folks who were chalking, that there was a crowd out on the sidewalk, and that crowd of people, as we saw in the video, were on the sidewalk. They observed Sergeant Mucci interacting with those two who were chalking the building, and then also observed him leave. This will be relevant at a later time.
Well, based upon that proffer, the objection is sustained.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So, is it fair to say that when you were speaking with Wesley and Adam and they were chalking, that the people who were down on the sidewalk saw them chalking and saw you speaking with them?
I can't testify to say what they saw. I can say that I had a conversation with them while they were chalking. I can't testify to anything that would be a pure assumption, and I can't assume that.
I understand. You're certainly in a visible place where those from the sidewalk could have observed you interacting with them.
Yes.
Now, when you cruised around and observed Wesley Gilray talking on the officer's memorial, and then switched locations to where you could observe you believed to be Amy O'Brien, was her back to you during this alleged time when she was chalking?
Well, when I observed Wesley, he wasn't chalking the monument,
Okay.
and I wouldn't have been able to observe Miss O'Brien at that point. It wasn't until I moved shortly after.
Right. When you moved shortly after and observed her, her back was to you?
No.
So you were here she was here, but she was chalking the wall, but her back was not to you.
No, I was looking northerly down the sidewalk, so I saw her from the side.
I see, thank you for clarifying that. Were you able to, can you tell us what it is that she wrote?
I couldn't tell you what anyone wrote on the wall.
I see. In the videos that the state showed, there was a depiction of Amy standing there with chalk in her hand. In the videos that the state showed, was there any video evidence of her chalking?
No, no evidence of her chalking, just her holding the blue chalk.
Okay. When you walked her back to her vehicle and cited her, is it normal procedure when you arrest someone for committing a crime with an implement that you confiscate that implement, place it in evidence?
It is.
Is the chalk that she allegedly used to mark the building, or the retaining wall, I should say, in evidence?
I didn't see her holding the chalk at that point. If I did, I would have taken it at that point, but I don't remember her having chalk in her hand when I walked back to the car with her.
So there is no actual chalk in evidence, and you are unable to tell us what specifically she wrote?
No, I can't tell you what she wrote, but I can testify that she had chalk in her hand.
Does the city have a graffiti removal program? The relevance is to the calling of the fire department. I'm not exactly clear on who made that call, but it seems that Mr. Mnuchin, with his many years in city service, should be aware of a graffiti removal program this city having.
But how does that go to establish an element or not establish an element?
If I'm not mistaken, the state plans to say that the fire department having called the fire department constitutes damage. And I would like to understand why the fire department was called instead of either the city maintenance crew, who normally would handle such things, or the graffiti removal program, and why that course of action was taken.
I guess to the extent that Sergeant Mnuchin can answer the question as to why they were called, I'll withdraw my objection at this point.
All right. You can answer the question. As I understand, the pending question is, does the city have a graffiti removal program?
At one point, there was a paid employee, so it does cost the city money to have graffiti removed, even if it was from a graffiti removal service. I can't tell you if, in fact, they are still in service with the city.
Okay.
So, was there at one point? Yes. Is there still now? I can't tell you, but if it was, he's a paid employee.
In your, I should have paid $350 an hour. Is the, have you ever heard before, in your many years dealing with graffiti and possibly having arrested other people with graffiti, have you ever heard of the fire department being called to clean graffiti?
I don't know of any. I don't.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, nothing to report, John.
You missed it.
Thank you. We're ready to see the next witness.
You missed
Mr. Gilmash, could you please remain seated and raise your right hand? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Under the pain of penalty of perjury. Please be seated. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Michael Gamache, G-A-M-A-C-H-E,
Mr. Gilmash, how are you employed?
City of Manchester Fire Department,
And how long have you been so employed?
28 years complete.
Were you on duty on June 4th of 2011?
Yes, I was.
At around 7:45 p.m., you had an opportunity to go to the Manchester Police Department.
Yeah, I received a call from your officer in charge.
Remember who that was?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay. Did you go over to the Manchester Police Department?
Excuse me?
Did you go there?
Yes, I did.
How many firefighters went with you?
It will be one engine with 4 firefighters in addition to myself.
Okay. why'd you go over there, sir?
We were asked for assistance from the police to watch an extensive chalking off on a couple of sides of the building, sidewalk.
How far away is the station from the Manchester Police Department?
It's on the same block.
And were you able to wash off the building?
Yes, we were.
Okay. Question, how much water did you use?
Approximately 750 gallons under high pressure.
Approximately how long did it take you to do that?
23 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions for you at this time. Can I ask some questions for you?
Yes, sir. In your 28 years with the fire department, have you ever been called to remove graffiti before?
I don't recall.
Is graffiti removal a regular part of what the fire department does?
No.
Do you have any idea why they would have called you instead of using the city graffiti program, removal program, or using the city maintenance crew to clean up the sidewalk?
I do not.
I have no further questions.
You're going to redirect.
Yes, sir.
Let me be seated in the last witness.
You may.
As you agree and say to raise your right hand, you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and the page penalties of perjury.
I do.
Please be seated. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is John Patty, last name is P-A-T-T-I.
Mr. Patty, how are you employed?
The city of Manchester as a police officer.
How long have you been so employed?
I've been with the Manchester Police for about 16 years.
Which division are you assigned?
Patrol,
What shift do you work?
412.
Were you familiar with an incident outside the Manchester Police Department on June 4th, 2011, involving people writing on the retaining wall in walls of the Manchester Police Department?
Yes, I am.
As part of your investigation, did you research the costs associated with the Manchester Fire Department responding to clean up the chalking issue?
Yes, I did.
What did you learn, sir?
I learned that a call for service for the fire department is $125 an hour with a 3-hour minimum.
Thank you, Sergeant Patty. No further questions for you at this time.
Sir. Sir, are you aware of usage by the police department of chalk in regular traffic enforcement? Either chalking tires or chalking sidewalks to mark where people have been?
I'm not aware of us doing that.
You're aware that it's common procedure among traffic enforcement?
No, I said I'm not aware.
I see, okay. And you made the call to the fire station?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if the city has a graffiti removal program?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And do you know if the city of Manchester has a regular maintenance crew?
For what? I don't know.
For the upkeep of the entire city, streets, parks, and other such things?
To be so general, I don't know. I know that each department has its own maintenance crew.
Mr. Gamache testified that in his 28 years, he'd never had anyone call him to remove graffiti before, and that it's not part of the normal work that firemen do. And he did not have, was not able to determine why it was that you called him instead of calling the city or the graffiti removal program to handle this. Could you enlighten us?
I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if it was because
You're an
it
idiot.
needed to be removed immediately. I'm not certain.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Nothing regarding.
All right, you step down.
Thank you.
No further witnesses from the state rests.
Defense has no witnesses to call.
All right, please their argument.
Yes.
Because the prosecution bears the burden of proof, they have the privilege of going last. Sir?
The criminal mischief statute states that a person is guilty of criminal mischief who, having no right to do so, nor any reasonable basis of belief for having such a right, purposely or recklessly damages the property of another. It seems clear to me that these elements, the following elements of the crime, were not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. One, whether or not she had a right. I know it has been argued before whether or not the First Amendment covered a right to charge. I'm not going to argue that. Continuing on, this is why, nor any reasonable basis of having a belief. The state has not even addressed this point, whether or not the defendant had a reasonable basis to believe that she had that right. And I would assert that she may have felt that way. And in addition, Sergeant Mucci testified that he was in a position where he could be seen from the sidewalk where Amy was, interacting with people who were chalking, and he then left the premises. So a reasonable person observing him standing and talking to people who were chalking the building and then observing him leave without arresting them would certainly believe that they might have a right to do that, or that if that person was causing damage, an officer might have arrested them immediately. Furthermore, there's a question of whether or not the chalk damages. I don't believe that it does, but I'm not going to argue that. As we continue on, it says that the damage must be purpose and reckless. And the state has not even introduced any evidence to show that the defendant intended to do any damage, and therefore, even if damage was done, which I don't believe has been shown, it certainly was not purposely done. In regards to the graffiti statute, the same lack of mens rea manifests itself in application of the graffiti ordinance. Furthermore, I believe the graffiti ordinance to be void for vagueness and overbreadth, particularly where it states that anything that is engraved on or otherwise affixed to or on a surface or structure, affixed on a structure, would be graffiti. Now that would include such things as parking enforcement, chalking people's tires and chalking the sidewalk, or also children playing hopscotch. It would also cover all of the political signs that we saw this weekend. Every single one of those was affixed on a surface within the city. So I believe the graffiti violation to be void, but even if not, again, the issue of the criminal mind was never even addressed and certainly not proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
There was an answer finding guilty with regard to criminal mischief. Justifies person guilty of criminal mischief with no risk, as we all know, having no right or reasonable basis to believe, having to right purposely or recklessly damage the property of another. We will assert here that there's evidence to support that it was a purposeful act, it was intentional writing of words upon the surface of the property of another, being the property of the city of Manchester, and the Manchester Police Department. There is no reasonable basis to believe they had such right. There was no permission given, no evidence that permission was given. In fact, the question was asked directly to Sergeant Mucci, permission was given, the answer was no. To the extent there is an attempt to argue under the state of information or ignorance, there is no written representation that that was permissible. The ordinance is posted. It's available online to anyone who wants it. Clearly discussing what is allowed and what is not allowed. Laws are readily available. And there was no permission. No permission was not granted. To the extent that it's damaged, the government obviously takes a different view of the term damage. Reading the statute as a whole as required to meet the rules of statutory construction, the government would point to paragraph 6. Any person who is found guilty of criminal mischief under paragraph 3, that is the provision that says all that criminal mischief is a misdemeanor. And that goes on to define vandalism, defacement, and destruction. And assert that those terms are clearly contained within the term damage when one reads the statute as a whole as required, and using the fair import of the terms in promotion of justice as part of the statute. Furthermore, the court would like the government to point to the legislative history regarding the adoption of actually of paragraph 6, in which was specifically asked whether or not the basement of the town hall would be covered under criminal mischief, and the answer was that it already was. The ordinance is straightforward. I want to assert that there is a violation of the ordinance. Plain language is not overly broad. Case on point for a very similar ordinance was Mahoney versus Doe out of the District of Columbia District Court, 2011, in which such an ordinance was struck down. There, the person was granted the sidewalk of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House in protest of abortion of the Obama administration's policy regarding abortion. The ordinance was reviewed and ultimately ruled to be constitutional, both on a facial challenge and as applied challenge. Given the evidence before the court, I'm assert that all the elements have been met. Who asked for a finding? Thank you, sir.
All right, I will take the matter under advisement.
If I may add, the state says that she purposely wrote. However, what is required that they prove is that she purposely damaged, i.e. intended to cause damage.
All right. Then I will take the matter under advisement. I need to review the arguments that have been made in light of the evidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
It's only a single exhibit, correct, folks?
Yes, sir.
Please rise.